Hello ladies and gentlemen, it's the Historical Gamer, and today I'm going to be taking a look at something that's a little bit new. I'm going to be looking at mobile games, in this case a game called Endgame Syria. The game was released on iOS a couple of weeks back to some controversy, and they actually had to remove the name Syria and replace it with Eurasia. That's because the game simulates the Syrian civil war, which is currently ongoing and has killed more than an estimated 80,000 Syrians. They had to remove all references to Syria from the game in order to get Apple to publish it, but on Android OS, the game still maintains its original source material and its focus on the Syrian civil war. In this game, you take on the role of the Syrian National Coalition, which is a group of different factions in Syria currently fighting together, loosely fighting together, and sometimes fighting each other against the current regime in Syria under President Assad. The game is part of a new series of games called Gaming the News, in which games are being designed around current events to try and educate players as well as providing entertainment. The game has two main phases, a political phase and a military phase. In the political phase, you will attempt to gain support for your cause by lobbying various countries and gaining support from them, as well as outmaneuvering your Syrian adversaries in an attempt to prevent arms and political support from going their way. The game follows much like a board game in that random cards are drawn and then you can choose which cards to play. At the end of each interaction, such as the political or the military phase, you get a summary of what happened. You can either gain or lose support, and there are also civilian casualties. Typically, the higher the civilian casualties, the more support you lose. If your support reaches 0, you end up losing the war. The higher your support goes, the more likely you are to topple the current Syrian regime. As I already said, the game has two main phases, political and military. Every turn has one of each. A turn represents 1 week, and while civilian casualties do mount, it is a slight annoyance to see the casualties climb so slowly. You start at 39,000 casualties for civilians, but rarely do more than 7 or 8 civilians get killed in a given week, which, while that would be ideal in a war like this, is highly unrealistic. Random events can also occur, in which cultural events or different political events can occur, which will also influence the support levels in the game. After the political phase comes the military phase. Here you will be dealt a series of cards, once again. The enemy, or the Syrians, will also have played their cards. You can see what they're playing and you can counter accordingly. For example, you can play comms cards, which will actually counter whatever the enemy's trying to do. It's basically like intelligence intercepting their plans and preventing them from occurring. You can also play various different military cards in an attempt to defeat the Syrians in a pitched battle or in rebellion groups. After you decide to do that, you end the phase and the results come out. You'll see your support change accordingly, and the war will progress. As time goes on, either you or the Syrian government will be worn down. One nice little touch that goes along with this is every time you select a card or tap on a card, it has a nice little description of it. So for the Republican Guard, it gives a nice little description of what that unit represents in the real world. For various militia groups, it will also tell you about their political affiliations, and you can really gain an understanding of how the Syrian conflict is far more complicated than you would believe just by watching on most major media news organizations, and how there are various factions while fighting together who also have competing interests. As the war goes on, the Syrians may offer you a peace bid in an attempt to share power, or you might defeat them all out. There is also the chance that you will be defeated, and as the war ends, you will also get different victory conditions based on this. As I already said, random events can be drawn in between turns, such as WMD fears or sarin nerve gas fears, and all of these have an impact on international support and the support for your country. In the top right of the screen, you can see what week you are. The war starts on week 95 weeks into the war, and each turn represents 1 week. As I already said, one turn consists of one political and one military phase, as well as event drawing cards. The game is played much like a classical board game. For this reason, I would recommend this game to anyone who's interested in board games, or really who's interested in politics or history or the Syrian conflict for that matter. It's a well put together, all a bit somewhat repetitive game, and I'd definitely go ahead and check it out. If you don't know much about the current conflict, you'll find yourself learning quite a bit if you just take some time to look through the extras of the game. If you already know a lot about the conflict, you probably won't find a whole lot here, but it's definitely a nice change of pace from all those 5-minute games where you don't have to think about anything at all. That's all the time I have for you here today. If you like this game, check it out on Android OS under the title of Endgame Syria or iOS under the title of Endgame Eurasia. Until next time, this is the Historical Gamer, signing out.